The world has seen brinkmanship before. Nuclear showdowns, proxy wars, red lines crossed and redrawn. But what is happening in the Arctic tonight is something else. It's not a standoff of fleets or armies. It's the moment when the ice itself becomes a battlefield. Under the aurora, nations that once called themselves allies are now playing a silent game of sabotage, secrecy, and denial. And the first piece to fall is not a ship, not a jet, but a base, one that wasn't supposed to exist at all. 0400 hours, January 14th, 2026. The northern coast of Greenland, latitude 75 degrees north, longitude 38 west, temperatures -40 Celsius, wind speed 30 knots. The Danish outpost known as Camp Njord has been operational for 6 days. It is built for listening, a network of buried hydroacoustic sensors, phased array radar domes, and underground hangars designed to host drones capable of tracking Arctic traffic from Siberia to the Labrador Sea. It is Denmark's statement to the world that Greenland is not up for sale. But in Washington, this new presence is viewed as provocation, not defense. Inside the Pentagon, the file is marked Polar Dawn. It is a covert directive authorized at the National Security Council level and erased from official records within 12 hours of its approval. Its objective, neutralize Camp Njord without open engagement. The operation is assigned to Task Force Sabre, a hybrid unit made up of naval special operations, cyber electronic warfare specialists, and civilian contractors from defense tech firms that don't exist on paper. Their cover story, environmental monitoring for the U.S. Geological Service. Their real mission, sabotage. 200 miles south of Thule Air Base, the U.S. Air Force C-30 passes through controlled airspace on a supply route to Iceland. On board are 6 operators in civilian cold weather gear and 2 sealed containers labeled geophysical monitoring equipment. Inside are modular drone units capable of burrowing through ice and delivering a shaped thermite charge directly into reinforced concrete. The drones are prototypes, designed under Project Vortex, and this is their first live trial. No one outside a classified chain of 12 people knows they're being deployed. At 0423, the C-30's transponder switches to silent mode. The aircraft drops altitude, hugging the icy terrain. Under cover of polar night, the cargo bay opens. 6 figures and 2 cargo sleds slide into the blizzard below. The aircraft never stops. Its flight path continues toward Iceland. On radar, it looks like a normal cargo run. On the ground, the team is invisible. Within 30 seconds, they are gone, swallowed by white darkness. Camp Njord's perimeter is quiet. Danish troops are few. 40 soldiers and 12 contractors, most of them engineers and technicians. They are confident in their isolation. The only threat they anticipate is environmental, not military. But their radar picks up nothing unusual because the threat approaching them is not coming by air or land. It is coming under the ice. The US drones have begun tunneling. Each one uses a plasma torch that melts ice and rock in a perfect downward spiral. Their navigation system tracks vibration patterns rather than GPS, avoiding any electronic signature. By 0500, the team has established line of sight on the base's perimeter from a ridge of black basalt. They are watching through thermal lenses. One operator reports faint heat blooms under the snowfield. Buried generators. That's their target. The commander, call sign Archer, gives the order. Initiate cascade. The drones adjust their descent angle and head straight for the underground power hub. The plan is simple. Cripple the energy grid, disable the radar, leave no trace. The thermite charges will vaporize the evidence before the Danes can recover anything. Meanwhile, in Copenhagen, a NATO intelligence feed detects unusual magnetic interference near the Greenland arc. The signal is logged but dismissed as atmospheric activity. Only one analyst flags it, a young officer named Rasmussen who has been monitoring Arctic telemetry since the base went live. He cross-references the interference with an anomaly from an American reconnaissance satellite passing overhead. The data suggests electromagnetic bursts consistent with plasma cutters, not solar radiation. He alerts the Defense Ministry. They don't answer. 0532. The drones reach depth. The first thermite capsule ignites. The reaction temperature hits 2,000 degrees Celsius within seconds. Concrete melts, steel warps. The power conduits feeding the radar dome are severed. Inside Camp Njord, alarms trigger automatically. Engineers think it's a transformer surge. Then the floor beneath the generator room erupts in white flame. The heat signature spikes so violently that an orbiting NOAA satellite mistakes it for a volcanic event. Archer watches the plume through his infrared feed. The operation should end here, but one of the drones malfunctions. Instead of melting its guidance core, it detaches and begins transmitting data to a default server, the one used for system diagnostics during testing in Virginia. Within minutes, the ping is detected by Danish SIGINT at Thule. Suddenly, the Ghost mission is no longer invisible. The Danish military scrambles its QRA-F-16 jets from Sundrestrum Air Base. 2 aircraft lift into the dark, heading north at 600 knots. On the ground, Task Force Sabre prepares to exfiltrate. The plan is to move west, reach the extraction zone near Petermann Glacier, and rendezvous with a stealth drone disguised as a meteorological probe. But as they begin to pack their gear, their encrypted link to satellite relay goes offline. Someone is jamming the frequency. Archer knows immediately that they've been burned. He orders an emergency fallback. The team starts moving, dragging sleds across terrain that doesn't forgive mistakes. 0600 hours. Danish patrol units deployed from Thule in tracked snow vehicles are closing in from the east. The wind carries their engine noise, faint but growing. The Americans set up a perimeter on the edge of an ice canyon, laying directional charges as a contingency. They still believe extraction is possible if the weather holds. Then a second problem hits. The storm intensifies. Visibility drops to 10 meters. The exfiltration drone aborts. They are on their own. Copenhagen now knows something catastrophic has happened. The defense minister orders the German Arctic Response Unit to deploy from Tromsø under NATO Article 4 justification. Germany sees this as more than defense. It's a chance to plant their flag next to Denmark's and challenge US dominance in the Arctic theater. 2 heavy lift helicopters carrying 40 commandos cross into Greenlandic airspace by 700 hours. They are armed for recovery, not war, but the Americans on the ice don't know that. By 0720, the Danish F-16s arrive over Camp Njord. They see the entire radar dome blackened, smoke venting from vents in the ice. The pilots can't identify the source, but detect faint infrared trails stretching westward, the movement of warm bodies across frozen terrain. Command orders them not to engage, only to track. The order is ignored. One jet dips altitude and fires 2 air-to-ground flares as warning shots. To the Americans below, it looks like a strike. They return fire with suppressed carbines, tracer rounds vanishing into the blizzard. The situation collapses in seconds. Danish troops approaching by ground intercept the gunfire through their thermal scopes. Believing they are under attack by an unknown force, they open up with automatic weapons. The Americans scatter. 2 are hit. Archer calls for medical extraction, knowing there will be none. The team splits into pairs, moving toward the glacier. The firefight rips across a kilometer of ice and darkness, unseen by the world, unheard by the governments that ordered them here. At 0800, a German reconnaissance drone picks up the infrared chaos and relays it to NATO headquarters. The feed is sanitized, labeled unconfirmed engagement. By the time Brussels reviews it, the storm has buried all evidence. Camp Njord burns beneath 10 meters of snow. The Danish commander on site declares the base compromised and orders evacuation. Within 20 minutes, the last radio signal from the installation cuts off. Hours later, as the Arctic light returns, a Norwegian Coast Guard icebreaker spots an oil slick spreading across the fjord. It's not oil. It's the residue of the thermite charge, floating in chemical layers like red smoke, trapped in ice. Photos leak online within 12 hours. The images show twisted radar dishes and melted structures, eerily symmetrical. The kind of destruction that doesn't come from an accident. Analysts begin speculating. Moscow blames Washington. Washington blames equipment failure. NATO calls for an investigation. The truth is buried under official silence. Meanwhile, 2 of the American operators are still alive. They've reached an abandoned weather station built in the 1970s. Frostbitten, dehydrated, running low on oxygen. Their communication devices are inoperative, but they carry one last drone battery with an internal beacon. When activated, it sends a low-frequency pulse toward the sky. The signal is weak, but someone picks it up. Not the US rescue team, but a German drone circling the area under NATO control. Berlin now has the proof Washington swore didn't exist. The drone footage clearly shows American equipment, marked and tagged, half buried near the sabotage site. Within hours, the data packet reaches German intelligence headquarters. It's not released publicly, but it's shared quietly with Copenhagen and Paris. What follows is a diplomatic earthquake. Germany demands an emergency session of the European Council. Denmark demands answers. The US denies everything. Greenland becomes the new front line in a war of narratives. By the next morning, the global news cycle ignites. Major outlets publish satellite photos showing black scorch marks on the ice sheet and destroyed Danish equipment. Hashtags flood social media. Arctic sabotage, Greenland crisis. US officials call the reports disinformation. But within defense circles, the debate is over. They know what happened. The question now is whether it stays secret or triggers open confrontation. At 0930 the following day, a message arrives at Thule Air Base from Washington. It's not an apology. It's a redeployment order. U.S. forces are to reinforce the Arctic command presence, citing regional instability. In plain terms, deterrence through overwhelming presence. The Americans are moving in more hardware, not less. That's when Denmark realizes what Polar Dawn truly was. Not just sabotage, but the opening move in a territorial takeover disguised as an accident. Berlin refuses to accept it quietly. Germany declares a security partnership deployment and begins moving troops and aircraft north, formally, to assist Danish stabilization efforts. The reality is less polite. It's a show of force aimed at preventing annexation without firing a shot. Within 48 hours, Greenland is crawling with NATO and US units that are supposed to be allies, but are now eyeing each other across runways and ice fields. Every radar sweep, every drone launch, every engine start risks triggering a misunderstanding that could light up the Arctic sky. The classified Pentagon report summarizing the mission is 1 page long. Objective achieved, attribution deniable, collateral acceptable. The language is sterile, detached, precise. It doesn't mention the men frozen under the snow, the diplomatic fallout, or the fact that Europe now sees the US as both partner and predator. Inside intelligence circles, the new term is whispered: strategic cannibalism. Allies devouring allies for territory and leverage. And in the silence that follows, the Arctic watches. The ice remembers everything. The explosions, the lies, the men who never came home. Greenland has become the quiet center of a new kind of war. One fought in the cold and denied in the heat of politics. The world won't call it World War III, not yet. But the first front line has already been drawn, and it runs straight through the frozen heart of the North Atlantic.